the emissions-free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, I'm Peter Andre alongside the awesome Ellie Costello, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Yeah, really good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for your company, and we have got a packed show coming up for you, so this is what's coming up in the next hour. To kick off, we're going to be asking you what you made of Boris Johnson. He gave evidence at the Covid inquiry this week. The former Prime Minister, he actually became emotional during his testimony.
Yeah, as you see, we often forget that he almost died of Covid himself. So it's whether you believe his tears are genuine or not.
Yeah, were they genuine tears or were they crocodile tears? Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.com.
Winter Wonderland has appointed 4 children as their board of directors this year, made up of roles including the Chief Magic Officer and Director of Thrills. We're going to be going down to Hyde Park later to meet some of those brilliant kids. They've got some incredible stories. This is a great segment.
Yeah, really, really special story. Do make sure you tune in for that. Plus, we're going to be tackling the big debate of this week. £169.50. It's a lot of money today, isn't it? Especially in a cost of living crisis. It's the new BBC licence fee from April. We're asking this morning, do you think it's worth the money? Lots of people would say you get quite a lot for that. Others saying you shouldn't be bound to pay it.
Interestingly enough, I've got a completely different opinion today to what I had 2 days ago. So it's going to be interesting to see what people say. OK, we'll be going into the jungle with my former campmate, Jenny Bond, who I absolutely love, to discuss all things down under, as our very own Nigel makes it into the final 4. Now, the question is, who's going to be the king or queen of the jungle?
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget, this show is nothing without you. We love to hear from you, don't we, Pete? So
we do.
Do get in touch. gbviews at gbnews.com.
Yeah, because remember, this show is based on what you guys think, not what we think, although we have our own opinions.
We have our own opinions, and we
do.
like to think we're always right.
Yeah. Before we do anything else, though, Tatiana Sanchez has all your news headlines. Here she is.
Peter, thank you very much and good morning. 2 minutes past 10, this is the latest. The former immigration minister has warned the Prime Minister's Rwanda bill does not go far enough. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Robert Jenrick says the plan will result in only shambolic, half-filled deportation flights. It comes as the Times reports the Rwanda legislation has been given only a 50% best chance of successfully getting flights off the ground next year. Yesterday, it emerged the government has already invested £240 million into relocating migrants. Greater Manchester Conservative Chairman Stephen Carlton-Wood says the stakes are high for the Prime Minister.
I think that Rishi feels as though he might have egg on his face if he doesn't proceed with it. And it's all right, people saying, oh, well, the law, we should sort of line your ducks up first to make sure that you know you're going to get it through a court. But as I said earlier, it's untested law. So there's always going to be an interpretation of that in a different way. And we've seen judges across the country have different interpretations of this anyway.
Police are investigating a possible hate crime after a Jewish woman was violently assaulted and robbed in North London. A warning: the following video contains distressing images. Footage of the attack has been circulating on social media of the 20-year-old woman walking along Rostrevor Avenue in Stamford Hill on Thursday afternoon. 2 women approached her from behind. She tried to evade them by crossing the road when the assailants pull her to the ground, kicking and punching her. The Metropolitan Police says it's keeping an open mind about the motive for the attack. The victim was left bruised, but she didn't need to go to hospital. The United States vetoed a UN Security Council demand for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. There were 13 votes in favour, whilst Britain chose to abstain from voting. As 1 in 5 permanent council members, the US has the power to veto any resolution. They stood alongside Israel, saying the proposed resolution would only plant the seeds for the next war. 3 elderly people have died after a large fire broke out at a hospital in Tivoli near Rome. The blaze started on an underground floor of the San Giovanni Evangelista Hospital, the flames reaching the emergency room and the intensive care unit. Thick smoke forced 200 patients to also be evacuated to another ward, among them several children and a pregnant woman. A 4th body was found in the mortuary, but that victim was believed to have died before the fire broke out. Members of multiple unions are meeting to argue against anti-strike laws after 18 months of industrial action. Hundreds of thousands of workers have taken action over pay and conditions. It's as regulations to ensure minimum levels of service came into force yesterday. This is the first time in 40 years the TUC have assembled a special national conference. Now, court documents have revealed the late Queen wanted the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to continue being given adequate security, even after stepping back from royal duties. An extract from a letter written by the late Queen's private secretary, Sir Edward Young, stated it's imperative that the family continues to be provided with effective security. In a statement read out in court on Prince Harry's behalf, Harry said he felt forced to leave the UK after the security he had been downgraded. He's suing Associated Newspapers Limited over an article written in February last year about his legal challenge against the Home Office following a decision to change his security arrangements. Hollywood star Ryan O'Neal has died peacefully at the age of 82. The American actor is best known for his role in the critically acclaimed 1970 romance Love Story. That movie is considered by the American Film Institute to be among the top 10 most romantic movies of all time. His son, Patrick, announced the news on social media, saying his father was a Hollywood legend, full stop. Now, brace yourselves as gale force winds and the heavy rain batter the UK this weekend. The Met Office says the Midlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland will see gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. Wind speeds will increase in the west throughout this morning, then across other areas through the afternoon before easily slowing from the west into this evening. Homes and businesses may also experience flooding, as up to 80 millimetres of rain is to fall in some parts of the country. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by simply saying, play GB News. Now back to Peter Andre and Ellie Costello.
Thanks, Tatiana. Right, later on, we're going to be joined by a very special group of children. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. This is our favourite story in the show today. Winter Wonderland in London has a new board of directors, and they are very, very special people. We're going to be going live to Hyde Park to meet these hugely important people, the Chief Magic Officer and Director of Thrills included, so you won't want to miss that.
Yeah, we'll be meeting them at 10:30.
Now, let's move on to the big story of this week, shall we? Boris Johnson, the former PM, at the COVID inquiry.
Right, so what did you make of his performance? He did become emotional on the first day. I think a lot of people forget what he himself went through with the disease, so it'd be interesting to see what you think.
Yeah, well, I definitely did. I mean, I was listening to him at the COVID inquiry on the radio, and he was talking at that time about his time in ICU, and you do forget that he was in intensive care. I mean, it was touch and go at one point, I do think. But not all of you were buying his expressions of remorse. So we're going to be talking about that this morning. We've got Alex Armstrong here on the sofa with us. And Alex, just before we come to you, let's just remind ourselves of what Boris Johnson said at the inquiry this week.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again, but somehow not. I understand the feelings of these victims and their families, and I am deeply sorry for the pain and the loss and the suffering of those victims and their families. what I'm trying to tell you, in a nutshell, and the NHS, thank God, did an amazing job and helped me survive. But I knew from that experience what an appalling disease this is.
That's Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, giving evidence at the COVID inquiry this week. Alex Armstrong joins us now on the sofa. He's a political commentator. Alex, what did you make of Boris Johnson's answers at the COVID inquiry?
I think it was a really humanising moment for Boris. And I know a lot of people watching it went through COVID. I had COVID twice. It's horrendous. I can't even imagine what it's like for a lot of people who had it. And just seeing him get quite emotional, you know, we haven't seen that side of him for a long time, I think, since he was Prime Minister. It was very professional. So seeing him come out with that emotion was quite touching, in my opinion. I know a lot of people disagree. But, you know, I think it's difficult when you're having the whole thing pinned on you to not feel a sense of responsibility and I think for people watching it, it must have been quite emotional for them. A lot of them lost loved ones. And Boris, as he said, he was in ICU himself. So it was really quite a powerful moment. I think it will be the one thing people take away from the whole inquiry will be Boris's time on there. But yeah, I did feel very emotional watching it. I don't know about you guys. What did you think?
I was quite struck by the emotion as well, but I think I had forgotten, really, his own battle with COVID, and I did find that quite moving, that he was getting choked up at his experience. It must have been quite scary. If we just take him as a human and not as a politician, being in ICU, feeling as though it was touch and go, whether you're going to survive or not, and then also trying to lead the country at the same time. I think it was the first time I'd actually taken that on board as how difficult that must have been as a human. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's easy to see things in hindsight. You might say, well, it was obvious what was right and what was wrong. But I think you don't know that until you've been through it. It's really difficult to not have some emotion for someone who went through it. I mean, you said you had it twice, right?
Yeah.
I had it 4 times. 3 times after I was vaccinated, which was bizarre, but I had it 4 times. And, you know, you think about when you've been through it or you've lost someone or you've, you know, had someone in ICU, you're going to have a different view on it and a different emotion. So in that side, yes, but there are people saying that he sort of rehearsed it and, yeah.
I mean, he definitely is going to rehearse it, right? I mean, you've got millions of people watching it. I don't think that takes away from your natural response. You know, I think there maybe was a bit of nonsense with the WhatsApp stuff. You know, I've heard relatively good with technology, so I don't know how much I believe those WhatsApp messages went missing. But, you know, on the human side of things, I think it was really hard. Obviously, he got heckled as well. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, that must be difficult. You know, you're getting millions of people listening to you and you're getting heckled by people who've lost a loved one. So I think that's tough.
I do think it's really important to reflect that, actually, that he was being heckled in the room. There were families, grieving families, who went in and very quietly held up placards, and they were placards and photos of their families' loved ones that they lost during COVID, and on the placards it says they can't hear your apology. And we do need to remember those people, don't we, who, for them, an apology is never, ever going to be enough.
No, it's not. I think that's exactly right. And, you know, when you've lost a loved one, no apology's ever going to make up for that, is it?
I mean, OK, so let's put it, say for the fact someone else was going to be in power at that time. Who would have got everything right? Maybe they would have got some of the things that Boris didn't get right, but there would have been other things they would have got wrong. I mean, it was the first time this had ever happened, right? So it is difficult to sort of pin everything on just one person.
Yeah, it's unprecedented, isn't it? There was no rule book, there was no playbook on how to do this, and anyone who's ever been in government or politics will tell you the same thing. It's always chaotic, and I think what this inquiry is doing is really focusing on the politicians and not really on what happened and what we could have done better as a country and what we could do now. This whole inquiry is costing us a lot of money, you know, topping up 100 million. So I think we're starting to get into this sort of, you know, attacking politicians rather than attacking what really happened. And so I think for Boris, this is a really hard thing to relive. And I really feel the public are going to start to see a different side to him. You know, I think he did a really good job under the circumstances.
I mean, you've got the other side of it too, where, yes, the lockdowns may have worked to help the vulnerable, but then you had the other side of it where mental health became a huge problem. People sitting there at GCSEs, you know, my son was sitting it through that time, and the difficulty of that, domestic abuse, all these other things that were just becoming huge on the other side. So we're trying to solve one problem, and then on the other side, there's all these other problems emerging.
Yeah, and I think the public want to hear about that. I want to hear about it. I want to hear what we could do better. I know I've got 4 younger brothers, and I know they really struggled during the lockdown. They had to do all their lessons on Zoom. I hate Zoom, so I can only imagine what it's like for these kids who've got lower attention spans to sit there and do that all day. Feel for them.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, you talk there about already we're topping 100 million on this COVID inquiry. Lots of people would say that money would be better spent trying to fix the damage, as you say, Pete, towards those who have suffered with mental health and other sorts of illnesses as a result of the lockdowns. Look, also on the sofa, we've got Charlie Rowley and the broadcaster, life coach and author Jenny Trent Hughes. So, Charlie Rowley, I want to come to you first because you were the former advisor to Michael Gove, who also has given evidence at the COVID inquiry. So, what is your opinion on the inquiry so far? I mean, it's been going on for a very long time and it's cost over 100 million. Do you think it's worth it?
I do, and I think it's look, it's due to run until about 2026, so we've got a bit of a way to go in this inquiry. But I think, look, for the families and people that have lost their lives, and for everybody that you were talking about, Pete, people that suffered mental health illness, people who had to do their lessons on Zoom and are still feeling the effects of the catch-up there, people who were self-employed businesses, people who weren't able to do their day-to-day jobs, who have been and found it just being locked down. Families have broken up, people have changed in themselves. So I think there's a whole a piece of work that needs to happen to make sure that we get to the bottom of the decisions that were taken that were wrong, decisions that were taken where the processes that were in place were not sufficient enough to make the right decisions, the personalities. We've seen through all the WhatsApp messages, which are, incredible, actually. They fall way below the standard that's expected of anybody in public life, particularly if you're serving at the highest level. And so all of those things, it's a cocktail of confusion and, disaster, basically, if you get the wrong decision because of all of those factors. But that's why the inquiry, I think, is so important. And I think, look, credit to Hugo Keith, the KC that's leading this whole thing, who is box office, if you ask me. He's brilliant to watch. He is absolutely brilliant to watch. But he is absolutely holding the right people to account, including Michael Gove. You rightly said he was on The Stand last week, Boris this week. Matt Hancock has to come back, I think, again. And we've got Rishi, the current Prime Minister, next week, who was obviously the Chancellor at the time that introduced schemes like Eat Out to Help Out, the furlough scheme, things that were deemed very good, but have they had a detrimental effect? We'll have to wait and see.
Charlie, you've segued us so beautifully onto our next story, which is Eat Out to Help Out, because, of course, Rishi Sunak going to be giving evidence on Monday. Jenny, what do you make of what you've heard so far, and what do you think we can expect from Rishi Sunak on Monday?
Well, I have been absolutely, everybody's watching I'm a Celebrity. I'm listening to this. I'm the only person I actually haven't listened to was Michael Gove. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Boris, so I thought he handled himself very well. I think that in comparison to people like Matt Hancock, which if I didn't live on a boat in Warwickshire, I would have been down there with a placard, he really annoyed me. I thought that Boris was actually quite honest because he said, I don't remember, I don't know. I thought maybe this, and in retrospect, I was wrong. And I actually thought he handled himself really, really well. And as far as the WhatsApp go, I'm not a WhatsApp fan, but have you ever looked back on your own WhatsApps? Would any of us want our WhatsApps being... No, we just wouldn't.
The abuse I've had from Ellie on WhatsApp is unbelievable.
Off your WhatsApp.
Diagrams, we're all talking filled, pictures of miscellaneous body parts. Nobody wants to share their
Your WhatsApp sounds great. I want to get in on that.
I'm sorry.
Jenny,
Yes. Now, what do I expect from Rishi on Monday? Right now, Rishi's on my naughty step getting a piece of coal for Christmas list over Rwanda. So I'm going to be watching gleefully on Monday to watch him try to tap dance his way out of Eat Out to Help Out, which was... because when I first heard it, I honestly thought it was a joke. They must be kidding. People are going to go out. Everybody's going to get us sick again. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
OK.
So,
well, we want to know more about your WhatsApp messages later. In the meantime, I want to talk to you about Christmas cards, Jenny, right? So apparently people aren't writing Christmas cards anymore. Do you think that's just because of new technology? And what do you think the reason is for this?
Well, funnily enough, when I first moved here from America 30 years ago, I had a Christmas card list of 500. And I used to hand make the cards. Technology came along, started doing that, and then this year I said, nope, I'm going to go back to making Christmas cards. And then the Royal Mail raised their price. So it's now £1 something to send a card. That's what I think is killing cards.
Is it postage, Charlie, or do you think it's something else? Have we got lazy in ourselves?
Well, nobody ever sends me a Christmas card anyway.
Christmas card list.
501.
Yes, exactly. They're all WhatsApp now.
Well, we've heard about your WhatsApp.
Interestingly enough, I remember my dad telling me just when he used to have to write letters, because Dad's 90 now, and he said that when he would write letters to his parents, and it would take, I think it was a 3-month turnaround before he got a reply, and how far we've come from that. Obviously, there's something special about reading books from a book or writing cards. There's something special about that. My wife would be more likely to do that. I'd be the type that would send a WhatsApp message. So I guess, you know, times are changing, aren't they? But are we missing the tradition?
You FaceTime now, don't you? That's how you would get in contact.
FaceTime. I mean, to be honest, my mum, right? I'm going to use my phone here for an example. When I ring my mum, she still can't get the hang of this, right? So all I see is the top of her head. I say, Mum, lift the phone up so I can see your head. So she's going, huh? She doesn't know the word tilt.
That's great.
So, you know, it is hard, but you're right. It's like my dad said through COVID. He said with FaceTime, it was a way of us being next to each other without having to wear a mask, which was a, you know, an interesting way of looking at it.
We are very lucky with technology now, aren't we? I mean, I certainly use FaceTime and WhatsApp, but I feel like we have lost the art, haven't we, of writing and writing letters and doing Christmas cards. Would you still do it, Alex?
No, I don't. I have to admit it. I only do it for a very select few, like my parents, my grandparents. But you know what I got that was really bizarre last year? I got an email Christmas card that was like a video, and it was like all these animations and stuff on it. And I was just like, what is this bonkers? Like, this is nuts. But it was funny, at least, you know. So I think people are finding new ways to send cards and to do this Christmas-themed stuff. More in the modern day, I think.
More creative.
Yeah.
Also, postage has got so expensive. I bought a pack of first-class stamps the other day. I can't remember how many there were in a pack. It was like £12.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. And I was like, well, that's why you don't send... I mean...
OK, why don't you go economy class, then? Maybe first class.
It's not particularly different.
Yeah, they are.
It's not that different. It's just a couple of p difference.
Yeah, right.
So you might as well.
As long as you're not sending presents by every, I think everything will be fine, you know.
But you have touched on something, because writing a card and writing something is more thoughtful than, you know, because we're on WhatsApp and we're on Messenger all the time.
Absolutely.
But I have, over the last few years, started a Christmas calls. So I do, on Christmas Eve, I just pick 10 people who I haven't spoken to for a good while, who I just want to reach out to. And in the hope that they're not doing anything on Christmas Eve, I'll just drop them a call and just say, hey, how's it going? And it can be a friend from university that you've not spoken to for a while. And it's just
really
a sort
nice.
of... But it's a
Do you dip them out of a hat, like a lucky dip?
No, I do think about them before. There's some people that I just discount immediately. But there are others who I'll add you to the list this year.
Thank you,
This is my phone number.
Thank you. It's the only reason I turned up.
Well, it's so wonderful
you,
to
guys.
see you all. Thank you so much, Alex, Charlie, Jenny, and you'll be with us throughout the programme.
Thanks, guys. Right, coming up, we're bringing you the latest news from the jungle, and we're asking you if the BBC is really worth the money. You may be surprised what I think.
Yeah, because you've changed your mind, haven't you, in the past few days?
Within 24 hours, because I did research. That's why.
That's what it is, yeah. Well, do stay tuned for that. You're with me, Ellie Costello, and my new friend and co-presenter, Peter Andre, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. The time is 27 minutes past 10. And don't forget to keep sending in your emails to me and Pete throughout the show today. gbviews@gbnews.com. This show is nothing without you, and we do love to hear from you, don't we? So loads of you getting in touch on the COVID inquiry. Boris Johnson gave evidence this week. We were asking what you made of it so far. Alan, good morning to you, Alan, says the inquiry is a joke. It's cost millions of pounds to achieve nothing. Boris did a great job organising the supply of the vaccine and keeping us informed of events. No one else could have done better. It was an unknown situation, says Alan.
Yeah, Brian says, hi, Brian. What do people... Well, Brian didn't say hi, Brian. What do people want? The disease was not selective. The only thing I think he did wrong was not to lock down travel into the UK early enough. Boris cannot be held responsible for everything.
Julie says that the COVID inquiry is another witch hunt. We know mistakes were made, but spending all this money is crazy. We need to learn by it so it never happens again. I mean, those running the COVID inquiry would say that's exactly why they're doing it. But, yeah, over £100 million spent so far. Do let us know what you think about that at gbviews@gbnews.com. Do keep your views coming in. Lots of you getting in touch on the BBC licence fee as well, so we're going to share some of those. But why are we talking about this, Pete?
Well, because it's set to rise next year from £159 to just over £169 a year.
Yeah, it's less than expected, but there are harsh penalties, including the possibility of jail for those who don't pay their BBC licence fee. So we are asking today, is the BBC worth the money? And you have changed your mind on this in the past few days, haven't you?
I have. So before we hand over to you guys to get your opinion, we've got Matthew Stolden here and Esther Stanthorpe. But before we do that, I want to say, yes, 2 days ago I was like, it's a complete waste of money. It's ridiculous. There's the cost of living crisis, people having to pay. Then all of a sudden, I started looking at how much Sky costs per month and how much Netflix costs per month. And I thought, actually, BBC's not just one... It's not just news.
Not just the news channel.
There's documentaries, there's sports channels, there's all that. So actually, really, you're not paying that much compared to some of the others. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, guys? Matthew, how you doing? Are you all right?
Yeah, very good to see you guys. Good to be back.
To get your opinion.
You're back,
on this.
Matthew.
Yeah, we both worked at the BBC, didn't we?
Yes.
But we have slightly different slants.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked there for 10 years. So I'm what you would call a staffer, which is a bit like a lifer in jail. And you get, if you're a staff at the BBC, it means you get the pension, you get all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people that work at the BBC. I think the BBC is a bit like a child that's entitled to money. It's been getting all this free money, and now because it's always had free money, it wants to carry on having money. I think that it should be a choice. I mean, we're in a different world now. There's thousands of channels. You don't have to watch adverts if you don't want to. I don't really think the BBC can justify putting people in jail if they don't pay. I believe in choice. Would people choose to pay that? Well, I don't know what messages you've got coming in, but would you choose to pay £169 a year?
It does seem a lot of money, and one of the issues I have with it is that a single mum or a single dad living on a council estate, as far as I know, has to pay the same amount as someone living in a mansion. And somehow, perhaps that could change and evolve, because otherwise it's a sort of a regressive form of taxation. But there is so much good about the BBC. I think it's absolutely fine to love a station like this, really engage with it, enjoy the diversity of views, a bit of a punch-up from time to time. But having a national broadcaster that, when it comes to news, bends over... doesn't always get it right. They're human beings at the heart of all this, of course, but bends over backwards to try to be impartial. I think that's very valuable. And taken as a whole, it is a wonderful British institution that I think, surprisingly, a lot of people are very proud of.
I mean, you made a good point there about what you said about, you know, different people from... with different backgrounds and with different financial, abilities to be able to pay this. But that's the same with Sky, that's the same with Netflix. They don't tier that, it's all one. So there's a point to be made there that actually all subscriptions are the same for everyone.
But except you can't watch sort of terrestrial TV unless you do have a licence. And so I think it seems to me there is a degree of unfairness in that, but it does offer a huge amount. It is good value for money. It's a sort of what is it, a coffee a week or something? When you think of all the radio channels, all the TV channels, the most precious thing to me, and I'll shut up in a second. The most precious thing to me is to have a news service that we can really rely on. You know, you watch GBNews and you have, as I said, a great diversity of views and it's really good debate, and I love coming on. But when it comes to sort of the hardcore news programmes, you know, the 10 o'clock news or whatever, I think we have to have a national broadcaster that, as I say, its absolute focus is impartiality.
Yeah. Esther, what do you make of that? Because when I'm meeting people out and about on the street, I met two people in a restaurant this week who love GB News and said they don't watch BBC anymore because they love GB News so much they don't want to pay their BBC licence fee. But is that the issue then, that it's mandatory? It is a mandatory tax in a way.
I think it's good to plug GB News. Look. It's got to be a choice. Surely it's got to be a choice. And then in terms of impartiality, I'm not 100% sure the BBC is actually now good enough and competitive enough to be able to justify. Is it a choice? I think we need to give people the choice. Would you choose to pay for it? Because at the moment, if you don't pay, you get put in prison.
But except you don't. I was going to pick you up on that. Actually, I think last year or the year before, whenever it was, Not a single person went to jail, is my understanding. So, look, yes, it is, in theory, a criminal offence, I think, not to pay your licence fee, but do people get sent to jail? Not in reality.
I think it's a new era. It's a new time. We live in the world of AI. We live in the world of digital. Children don't even know what the BBC is these days. People have got tablets. People have got different platforms. Some people don't even bother watching television on a television. I know a lot of people that just watch stuff on iPads and computers. It's a new world out there. I don't think the BBC has caught up with it. I think the BBC is actually quite old-fashioned and finds it very difficult to change. I think it needs to change.
I guess that there's the argument as well that if you don't pay your subscription to Netflix, you can't watch it. So I guess if you don't pay, you can't watch TV. I know it sounds harsh, but like you said, people have got all these other means of watching things. Now, you can... I know it's live streaming that you can't watch without the licence. So you have to have the licence to watch anything live. But anything that's, I think, on demand, you can't watch. But things like Netflix and all that, you can watch without the licence.
And you can listen to the radio, of course, can't you?
There are both sides.
Do you think that there needs to be a different model? I mean, you're talking there about modernisation.
Yeah.
Perhaps having something mandatory is an old-fashioned way of looking at things. Should we be looking at something like a Netflix or an Amazon, where you pay your $6.99 a month or whatever it is, and then you can opt in or opt out?
I think when it comes to drama and fact-ent, you know, entertainment shows, shiny floor shows like Strictly Come Dancing, although they're very, very popular, there is an argument that we shouldn't actually be forced to pay for that sort of stuff. We should be able to opt in, opt out. It's the news thing that I worry about. And of course, as I said earlier, people are human beings and people do have their biases and their unconscious biases. But I worked at the BBC for 9 years in news, and I can honestly say there were genuine, proper attempts to be impartial.
Do you know what? I do want to ask you to something. This is totally different, but it has happened this week and it is relevant. I hope we can show this picture. This is Mariam Moshiri. She is a BBC presenter. You may have seen this happen this week. She was messing around with her cameraman. She made a gesture, shall we say, towards the camera and her friend behind the camera. It was caught on camera. Now, the Conservative Party have taken a screenshot and used it to attack the Labour Party, saying, this is Labour when you ask for their plans to tackle illegal migration. Now, I want to ask you about this because, Matthew, I know you've got an opinion. Do you think that is a professional way for the Conservative Party to behave on Twitter?
If you take that image in isolation, it shows that this Conservative Party that has been in power for 13, nearly 14 years is simply unfit for running the country. I thought it was disgraceful. The question I ask is, can you imagine any viewers watching today who are fans of Margaret Thatcher, and I wasn't, can you imagine Margaret Thatcher signing that off? There is a caveat, and that is that Labour have also been putting out some pretty dodgy attack ads. So it's not just the Tories. And what I would caution against both parties is that we don't want this to be the dirtiest general election campaign ever. I mean, it might make for good headlines, it might be quite fun on some level, but we want to have dignity and professionalism, that's the word you used, I think, in our politics.
I mean, it could be her way of just saying what she thinks of the BBC licence. I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying.
OK, I've got one point, that if you worked in TV, which you have, and I've worked in the BBC for 10 years, I've worked in fact-ents as well, you know that if you are anywhere around a camera or a microphone, don't do anything that you don't want to be caught on camera, because you
remember Gordon Brown? Do you remember Gordon Brown, when he called that woman who was raising questions about immigration a bigoted old woman, or whatever he said, in 2010, because the microphone was still on? That was a disaster. That might have lost Labour that election.
Happened with the Bee Gees as well, don't forget.
It happened with the Queen. She said that disgusting little man.
It does happen. I did feel for her in that moment. Do let us know what you make of the Tory party using that image on Twitter. Do you think it was just a laugh, or do you think it wasn't very professional? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Matthew and Esther, really good to see you this morning.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
so very much.
We'll
And just to say quickly, before we get into our next story, we've got a wonderful story coming up, haven't we, with an amazing actress.
Oh, Stephanie Beacham. It's incredible because what she's done is she's done a film based on a subject that's very close to her heart, something very personal to her, and I can relate to that as well. So I was very, very excited she was coming on to talk about it.
Yeah, she's
we'll
coming
tell you more later.
towards the back end of this hour, so do stay tuned for that.
OK, this year, Winter Wonderland has appointed a board of directors to keep the park in check. Now, it's made up of 4 very important roles. We've got Chief Magic Officer, Chief Candy Officer, Executive Ice Director and Director of Thrills.
Now, these very important positions are held by some amazing children who are all very passionate about their respective roles and keeping things in order. Well, I'm delighted to say that we are now joined by these special helpers live from Hyde Park. Welcome to the show,
hey
all of you. So fabulous to see you all there. Hope you're staying dry as well. Betsy, let's start with you. Give us a wave, Betsy, just so I know which one we're talking to. Betsy, give us a wave. Hi, Betsy. So you are 10 years old and you are the Chief Magic Officer at Winter Wonderland this year. Tell us, what's that role all about? How do you make sure you have that festive cheer at Winter Wonderland?
Basically, just keep people laughing, make sure they're happy with what they're doing here and make sure they're having fun.
Love that. All right, Jackson, Director of Thrills. Where are you, Jackson? Jackson, you're 6 years old, right? Same age as my son, and he really is all about the thrills. What does it mean to you? You're obviously testing out the roller coasters. Tell us what you're doing.
I'm doing today to the world record and see the rides are good and they're not really good.
And is it fun? Are you having the time of your life doing this? It's a big responsibility.
To join it, to see like if they're really good and see if they're a little bit bad.
Well, mate, you've sold it to me. You've sold it to me.
It's a very, very important job. Kezia, I can see you in the back there. You've got a great job this year, the Chief Candy Officer. So you're in charge of all the sweets, I suppose, and you've got a very important job of taste testing, just to make sure that everything is up to scratch. What's your job all about? Describe it to us.
So I'm going to be making some sweet treats and testing them to make sure that they're great for everybody to try.
And what makes a good sweet to you, Kezia? What are you looking for?
Not too sweet, but sweet enough, and overall just enjoyable to eat.
And what's your favourite sweet? See, I can't handle anything sour. That wouldn't be for me. I'd be better with like a gummy sweet or something.
I do like sour sweets, but I'd say my favourite sweet, I'm not sure, but my favourite chocolate is either Snickers or Ferrero Rocher.
Ooh, I love it. You like the nutty, Kezia? A little bit nutty.
Love that.
Yeah.
Right, Romy.
Yeah.
Romy, you're 11 years old and you have been given the job of Executive Ice Director. Now, just the word executive is pretty impressive. How do you feel about that?
I feel very good to try out the ice and see if the ice is good.
And do you feel pressure, Romy? Because there's lots and lots of children going to Winter Wonderland. Do you feel like the pressure to make sure it's a really good experience for other children, or is it just a job that you really, really enjoy?
Yeah, it is pressure, but I do feel like it's a job I really enjoy.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that's why you're executive.
That's why you're executive.
Love that.
Betsy, I want to come back to you because you are so special and people wouldn't know your backstory. Standing there with a wonderful smile on your face, but you have actually survived cancer, haven't you? And you are just 10 years old. And now you are making pyjamas for children who are going through chemotherapy. I mean, you are just amazing. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to help other children going through chemotherapy.
So, well, obviously, I'm a cancer survivor, so I know how it feels in the hospital and stuff. So it's quite uncomfortable sometimes, and like you have to have like either a PICC line or any line to put your chemo and stuff through. So you have to either take your arm out of your top or lift it up or that. And for some people, it's quite like unsettling for them to do that. So I made pyjamas specially for that, so they open up so that you can just lay there in comfort.
Well, you are a superstar. We need people like you in this world because not only you've been through it, but of course you're helping others. That is brilliant. So thank you very much, guys. You've all been so wonderful. I guess you've got to get back to your jobs, right? Time's ticking.
Thank you very much, all of you, and have
guys.
a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks.
Oh, they are superstars, aren't they? And Betsy, just incredible. Isn't it? I mean, going through so much and then inventing something to help other children who are going through cancer.
There are great people in this world. There really are. Right.
It's a good reminder, isn't it?
Absolutely. Coming up, we'll be joined by my former jungle campmate, who I love, Jenny Bond, to discuss all things Down Under.
Plus, we're going to be going back to Hyde Park, to Winter Wonderland, to hear all about the wonderful new board of directors.
They're all high achievers. In fact, none of them are over 15. You're with Saturday Morning Live with us on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new
It's
teeth.
your new teeth.
I
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Really good to have you with us this morning, and so many emails are coming through. Thank you so much for your company. Judith says, I'm loving Peter and Ellie. They're great together, informative and fun. That is what we are going for, Judith, so thank you. Christmas wishes, she says.
I'm not going to read the next one because it's very nice. You can read that one, but Scott...
I'll read it. Do you want me to read it?
No, you can do it in a minute. Scott...
I'll get back in my
Hi,
box.
Peter. That was me telling you. Yeah. Hi, Peter and Ellie. Could I please have a shout-out from both of you live on air? So that's from Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
It would make my day. I met Peter in Hunstanton. This is one of those ones I can never get right. Earlier this year, also met Ellie at Trick Awards in June.
Oh, hi, Scott. Yeah. Very good to see you, I'm sure, at the Trick Awards in June. Very good to hear from you again now.
Lovely.
And Sandra says Peter Andre loves him and a great addition to GB News. And Peter is too humble to read that himself.
No, because it would have been, although I made a bigger deal of it than I should have done, I should have just let it go.
But loads of you are loving Pete, and
thank you
huge
very
welcome
much.
to you. Really good to have a second show with you here on GB News. And loads of you getting in touch as well on the licence fee as well, so we'll just share a few of those. Margaret says she doesn't watch the BBC and she doesn't want to pay Gary Lineker's salary.
Oh, actually, Leslie echoes that. He says, if they stopped paying mouthpiece Gary Lineker so much silly money, they might find more people would be willing to pay the licence fee.
Lots of people not happy with those big salaries. John says it's not the amount of the fee, it's the fact that you can't opt out of it. And I think that is what a lot of people's issue is. It's the fact it's mandatory. That's the issue.
And Robert says the difference between the BBC and other companies is that you end up in prison if you don't hand over the money. That does sound really harsh.
Yeah.
We never really went into that before, but that sounds incredibly harsh. What's all that about?
There's so much to get into. Yeah, it's really, really difficult. Do keep those emails coming in to us on any of the stories that we're talking about today, gbnews@gbnews.com. But we're going to take you down under now, which you're not sure about, are you? I'm not sure about that phrase. But after a very dramatic week down under, we thought it was only right that we delved into the goings-on. So as well as taking a look back at it, and of course, I believe this to be alongside your series.
Very good.
Saved myself. One of the best series that we've had. Because, Pete, you were in the series in 2004?
I know. That was a long
19
time
years ago. And, of course, Pete came second place. He did very, very well.
But also someone that came into the final that was second, no, was she third? Was actually my really good friend and fellow campmate Jenny Bond. She's going to give all her thoughts on this series, and of course, being a finalist. Hi, Jenny, you look lovely. Look how festive she looks.
I know, and look, we're coordinating as well.
Yeah, you guys match. See, it's good that I'm right in the middle here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you, Jenny, first of all, welcome. What are your thoughts? The final, you've been there, you've experienced it, you've smelt the smells and had those feelings of that, dreaming of that steak when you leave the jungle. What are your thoughts?
I've smelt the smells along with you, yes. And don't you take my second place away from me, Pete. I came second, you came third. 20 years ago, eh? We were together, weren't we, right at the end? Do you remember? We were just four of us. It was Brockett and you and me and Kerry.
That's right.
And at this stage, do you remember we were pretty exhausted, but we were quite elated to be almost at the final, and we knew what was coming. I think we knew what was coming, which is what they'll be thinking of now down under, which is the cyclone. Wasn't that fun? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was actually so much fun. I think when you get to that point, don't you, you're just so elated to have gone that far. You just don't care at that point. You know, being a finalist is as good as winning. I think that's how that's how I felt anyway. And when you're watching it now, are you almost like feeling like you're there?
Yeah. We do. You and I just know how it feels, how hungry you've been, and then you've got the prospect of a feast on the last night. Do you remember? You guys, you and Kerry and I were given a feast on the last night, and then I think individually they can choose now, but then you had to choose for all three of us. And you chose, I could have murdered for this, you chose sausages, mash and gravy, which I thought,
how do you remember that?
I want a seafood salad.
Well, funny enough, Jenny, and I want to ask you what you think about Nigel and you know, the full finalists. But I just wanted to ask you, I remember thinking at that moment how when I get out of there, I want to eat the biggest burger I could think of because we'd been starved for so long and people don't believe it's genuine, but you really do starve. And remember Razor Ruddock, how much weight he lost and he was really struggling with that. But anyway, and I remember getting out and only being able to have a quarter of a burger. That's how much our stomachs had shrunk. Yeah. when you see now, when you think that they're all at that place where they're just dreaming and wanting to get out, do you think that the right finalists or the finalists are the right finalists? That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I mean, they're a really nice bunch this year. I have to say, I thought that Nigel Farage was a little bit bossy boots. Well, actually, a lot bossy boots yesterday. I mean, he's been called to his face a job's worth, and he is bossy around the kitchen, which I don't think goes down very well. I don't think he's very sensitive to other people's feelings. I don't think that he realised that Josie really did want to do the trial last night, but he pushed himself forward and said, I'm doing it. So I thought he might get booted out last night, actually. I don't know. I mean, his political support may be such that, in fact, he might be the winner, but I think probably Sam is going to get it, don't you? The child man.
Yeah, he has done really, really well this series, hasn't he? And Jenny, it was so emotional watching it last night. I was watching it with my sister. She was actually really crying watching the campmates reunited with one special member of their family, or in Sam's case, his friend Pete, who came along. That must be such an emotional moment after 3 weeks by yourself and no contact, no texting, no phone calls. It must be a really beautiful moment for those campmates.
It was very touching. I thought Marvin, particularly, and Rochelle was really lovely. And Tony, the big bruising boxer, he's an absolute softie, isn't he? He really is. But we didn't get that moment. Our loved ones weren't brought into the jungle, were they?
No, that's true. Jenny, thank you so much. Always lovely to see you. And thanks again for just being part of the Rumble in the Jungle.
And she's got a great memory as well. She remembers what you ordered on the last day, 19 years ago. Very impressive, Jenny. And we do have that QR code, so do make sure you scan that next time it comes up on the screen. You get 5 free votes for Nigel. So if you want to see him crown King of the Jungle, do that. Do stay with us. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. I'm Ellie Glazier. It was a very wet and windy start to Saturday for most of us, but there is some sunshine on the way across the southern half of the UK. Storm Ellen, though, has been named by the Irish Met Service, bringing the strongest winds and the heaviest rain across the Republic of Ireland. But this spreading its way across northern England and into parts of Scotland later this afternoon. Those strongest winds expected along Irish sea coast, where we could see gusts up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon. And that heavy rainfall as well, really building up across Northern Ireland, Northern England and into parts of eastern Scotland through this afternoon. The southern half of the UK generally staying sunnier with temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees. As we go through Saturday evening, rain gradually brings its way south and eastwards across the Pennines and into parts of eastern England through into the early hours of Sunday morning. This could bring some localised flooding to some parts through Sunday morning. Some strong winds too likely, but further south it will be turning brighter with some clear skies to start on Sunday morning. Temperatures here holding up above zero, around 6 or 7 degrees, but a little bit cooler just across parts of Scotland. A brighter start for many of us on Sunday, though, but turning cloudy from the southwest as this band of rain pushes up and spreads its way north and eastwards through the day on Sunday. Some heavy rainfall totals, again falling on some already very wet ground, but some brighter spells across the very far southwest and perhaps a little bit milder here. Temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees, but around average across the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, I'm Ellie Costello alongside Peter Andre, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Yeah, thank you guys for your company. We've got a very, very busy show for you today. Here's what's coming up.
Right after the news headlines, we're going to revisit Boris Johnson's emotional testimony to the COVID inquiry.
Did he convince you, or are there still questions for him to answer?
Yeah, do let us know. We're also going to be joined by Showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci to go through all of the latest stories and scandals in the showbiz world. Of course, we're going to be talking about Shane MacGowan's funeral, which was just a beautiful tribute to him, wasn't it? Dancing in the aisles, singing Fairy Tale of New York.
It
was beautiful.
made you feel you're celebrating someone's life as opposed to it being a very sort of morbid funeral, and I think it was just a beautiful touch.
Yeah, it really was. We're going to be looking at that in detail.
Yeah, and we're very happy to be joined by the acting legend Stephanie Beacham to hear all about her career and her latest challenging role. This is a must-see.
And we have been absolutely inundated with your emails this morning. We love hearing from you, so do keep them coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com.
But before we do anything else, Tatiana Sanchez has all your news headlines.
Peter, thank you very much, and good morning. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Liberal Democrats are calling for an investigation to see whether the Prime Minister breached the ministerial code by failing to declare a £100 million payment to Rwanda. It was sent to Kigali in April on top of the £140 million already paid. That brings the total to £240 million. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has warned that Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill doesn't go far enough. The Times reports the Rwanda legislation has been given only a 50% best chance of successfully getting flights off the ground next year. Greater Manchester Conservative Chairman Stephen Carlton-Wood says the stakes are high for Rishi Sunak.
I think that Rishi feels as though he might have egg on his face if he doesn't proceed with it. And it's all right, people saying, oh, well, the law, we should sort of line your ducks up first to make sure that you know you're going to get it through a court. But as I said earlier, it's untested law. So there's always going to be an interpretation of that in a different way. And we've seen judges across the country have different interpretations of this anyway.
Police are investigating a possible hate crime after a Jewish woman was violently assaulted and robbed in North London. A warning: the following video contains distressing images. Footage of the attack has been circulating on social media of the 20-year-old walking along Rostrevor Avenue in Stamford Hill on Thursday afternoon. Two women approached her from behind. She tried to evade them by crossing the road when the assailants pull her to the ground, kicking and punching her. The Metropolitan Police says it's keeping an open mind about the motive for the attack. The victim was left bruised but didn't need to go to hospital. The United Nations vetoed a UN Security Council demand for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. There were 13 votes in favour, whilst Britain chose to abstain from voting. As one in 5 permanent council members, the US has the power to veto any resolution. They stood alongside Israel, saying the proposed resolution would only plant the seeds for the next war. 3 elderly people have died after a large fire broke out at a hospital in Tivoli near Rome. The blaze started on an underground floor on the San Giovanni Evangelista Hospital, the flames reaching the emergency room and the intensive care unit. Thick smoke forced 20 patients to also be evacuated to another ward, among them several children and a pregnant woman. A 4th body was found in the mortuary, but that victim was believed to have died before the fire broke out. Members of multiple unions are meeting to argue against anti-strike laws after 18 months of industrial action. Hundreds of thousands of workers have taken action over pay and conditions. It's as regulations to ensure minimum levels of service came into force yesterday. This is the first time in 40 years the TUC have assembled a special national conference. Court documents have revealed the late Queen wanted the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to continue being given adequate security even after stepping back from royal duties. An extract from a letter written by the late Queen's private secretary states it's imperative that the family continues to be provided with effective security. In a statement, Prince Harry said he felt forced to leave the UK after the security he had been downgraded. He's suing Associated Newspapers Limited over an article about his legal challenge against the Home Office following a decision to change his security arrangements. Hollywood star Ryan O'Neal has died peacefully at the age of 82. The American actor, best known for his role in the critically acclaimed 1970s romance love story. The movie is considered by the American Film Institute to be among the top 10 most romantic movies of all time. His son, Patrick, announced the news on social media, saying his father was a Hollywood legend, full stop. And brace yourselves as gale force winds and heavy rain as Storm Ellen batters the UK this weekend. The Met Office says the Midlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland will see gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. Wind speeds will increase in the west throughout this morning, then across other areas through the afternoon, before easing slowly from the west into this evening. Homes and businesses may also experience flooding, as up to 80 millimetres of rain is to fall in some parts of the country. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now back to Peter and Ellie.
Thanks, Tatiana. Now it's our favourite bit of the show. We are having a delve into the inbox to have a look at what you've been emailing in. We love to hear from you, don't we, Pete?
We absolutely do. Right, I've got Robert here, who's pro-BBC. He says, I think that the BBC licence is good value for money. Other streaming services went up by 40%, whereas the licence fee has only gone up by 9% after a 2-year freeze. It is impossible to put broadcast TV behind a paywall, so it is not feasible to make it a subscription service. Most of the TV I watch is the BBC, but I also watch GB News Breakfast and Saturday Live.
Yeah. Yeah, very important to say. Lots of you getting in touch on the BBC licence fee. It's dividing you all. Susie says there's no way we should be forced to pay huge amounts in a monthly membership fee for something that we don't want or use. I'd rather save the money. She says, I already spend nearly £100 a month on my chosen streaming services. So that it does add up,
Here's a good point, yeah. Jim, morning Ellie, morning Peter. Hi, Jim. Great to see you both brightening up this morning so much. Yes.
Oh.
2 traditional cards, posted second class. You can put a WhatsApp message on your mantelpiece and look at it for heartwarming weeks.
Well, you can't put a WhatsApp message on your mantelpiece and look at it
You
for
can't.
weeks.
Although that's what my mum would say. I just realised that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
But it's a good point.
An inquiry, then you might have it up for weeks.
It's a really, really good
But we'd
point.
like to see your WhatsApp on the mantelpiece.
Yeah,
I'm not letting this slide, I'm just saying.
So it's a really good time to invite in our panel now. Really good to see you. This is Jenny, Charlie and Alex. They're all here with us this morning to discuss today's top stories. Really, really good to see you all. Charlie Rowley is Michael Gove's former special advisor and now a political commentator, and Jenny Trent Hughes is broadcaster, life coach and author. So we're going to be going through some top stories with you. But Alex, let's start with you, Alex Armstrong, who's also a political commentator. We've had the COVID inquiry this week. Boris Johnson, it's been box office, hasn't it? Some would say those 2 days of him answering questions at the inquiry. How do you feel it's gone? Actually, before I get into you, let's share a little clip of how it's gone. Let's just remind ourselves of Boris Johnson and this week at the COVID inquiry.
Do you know why your phone was missing those 5,000 odd WhatsApps?
I don't know the exact reason, but it looks as though it's something to do with the app going down and then coming up again, but somehow not. I understand the feelings of these victims and their families, and I am deeply sorry for the pain and the loss and the suffering of those victims and their families. What I'm trying to tell you, in a nutshell, and the NHS, thank God, did an amazing job and helped me survive. But I knew from that experience what an appalling disease this is.
So, Alex Armstrong, I mean, were you struck there by the emotion at the end of that clip, talking about his own experience, actually, in ICU?
Yeah, it's quite a lot, isn't it, to have all this pressure piled on you, talking about your own personal experience, first of all. I know we spoke about this earlier, we've all had some experience with COVID, but then to have the responsibility of everyone else laid on top of you as well. And he comes across so emotional when we watch that, and I think the public will resonate with a lot of the public and say, well, actually, that's a very human side to a man who was under a lot of pressure. I don't know how he could have done any better. You know, this is a really, really tough time, COVID. It was extremely, I can't imagine what the pressure is going under this inquiry as well. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely. But I mean, there are families out there who've lost loved ones who don't think that an apology will ever go far enough. It obviously won't bring their loved ones back. But many of them were actually visible at the back of that room, weren't they, holding up placards saying they can't hear your apology. And he does divide people still, doesn't he, Alex? I mean, just now, dipping into the inbox again, David says that Boris helped him through COVID, talking about the vaccine, giving him hope, letting him know that the vaccine was on the way. But Barry says Boris is just one big con man. Whatever he says cannot be believed.
Well, I just think this is it, isn't it? And Boris has always been a divisive figure. I mean, you either love him or you hate him, and whether you take him for his words watching the inquiry or you don't, you may have already made your mind up, frankly. What I think is good about these inquiries is it first of all holds politicians accountable for what happened, and we have to do that. It's the right thing to do. But I think I'd urge people to look at the human side of this. Boris is a human being. He's not a robot, and it's an extremely difficult thing to talk about.
I guess, you know, the point about saying whether you love him or hate him, the bottom line is that whoever would have been in power at that time may have got some things right, but would have also got some things wrong. Maybe different things to what Boris got wrong or right, but you know, it's a tough thing to do when it's unprecedented, never happened before, and you're dealing with it. It's easy now to say, well, this was wrong and that was wrong and this didn't work and that didn't work, but at the time, I guess you're forced to make decisions, and everything riding on you is pretty tough. But I guess that's the job as well.
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot, Peter, about, you know, who would have been the right Prime Minister to do this, and was Boris the right Prime Minister at the right time, or would someone like Theresa May have handled the pressure better? You know, I was listening to a podcast with George Osborne the other day, and he was saying that Boris was under a lot of financial pressure at the time as well, because he was taking a big pay cut, so we had a lot going on. That's why he didn't attend Cobra meetings. So I think, you know, that who would have done a better job? I think there's a big question to answer there. But we'll never know. And I think this is the whole thing about this inquiry. I hope it gives some comfort to the victims and their families.
And all we can do is learn lessons, can't we? Do let us know what you make of the COVID inquiry, what you've heard so far, what you're thinking about Rishi Sunak. He's giving evidence on Monday. GB News at GBNews.
Now, the Eye came up with something really interesting about... This is a completely different subject here, but why no one's dancing at pop shows anymore now? I don't know if you've noticed this.
Why are you looking at me?
Well, why am I looking at you? I have no idea. Do you dance at pop shows?
Did anybody tell you anything?
Yeah, I've read it on your
WhatsApp group. Yeah.
Seen films of it.
But have you noticed, like, you know, Madonna, these are legends, Beyonce, that are performing, and you're not seeing... Well, there might be a reason they don't dance to mine, but let's not even go there. The point I'm trying to make is I've noticed it a lot when I'm seeing these shows, that people are watching sort of like old theatre where you're not allowed to stand up, you're not allowed to... What do you think the reason is? Do you think it's because of social media? They don't want to make themselves embarrassed? Shall I come to you first, or shall I... You're laughing.
I danced in the supermarket. And I remember when I first got married and moved here, I went to see Eric Clapton, who is, you know...
Yeah, amazing.
And it was at the Royal Festival Hall, and I'm there with my new, nice little Irish, well-behaved husband. And Eric Clapton comes out on stage, and ladies and gentlemen, Eric Clapton, and I go, wah! And I stand up, and I'm... Wah! And all of a sudden I look around and I realise I am the only person standing up screaming, and my husband is sitting there like this. Oh, my God, oh, my God. I dance everywhere. I am 190 years old. I dance in the supermarket. I dance on the street. I dance everywhere.
But, Jenny, do you feel like the minority? Do you feel as though...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think people are reserved? Do you think British people are reserved, or do you think it is the social media
First of all, that whole British Reserve business, I think, is a nonsense. But we'll just put that to one side. It's social media.
Yeah.
It's social media. We are people who are like you and I. I'm much older than you, but let's say you and I.
Not much.
We were wild because we weren't followed around. We knew that we could do whatever we wanted to.
And look, we can see Pete on the screen now.
You didn't tell me about this.
You've got lots of people dancing and moving and grooving there, Pete.
But I've noticed it a lot, that it's different now. You know, people used to hold up candles, remember? They used to hold up these... Lighters,
Yeah.
And now, of course, you can't do that, so they hold up their phones and they're not actually watching.
They're not engaging.
They're not watching the show.
Does that annoy you when you see people... I mean, you can see it now, can't you? People just videoing you. When you're looking out onto the audience, does that bother you when all you see is just a sea of phones?
No, to be honest, I'm just glad you played a video. I was all excited. We're talking about Madonna, we're talking about... You throw me and I'm like, yeah, I'll take this. No, it's just nice to know that one thing that's happened since COVID is, of course, the crowds have gotten bigger on shows. You know, people go out a lot more, they go and see these things, but I have noticed a change, definitely.
I think that's really interesting that you, in your own experience on stage, have noticed fewer people are dancing.
Yeah, I'm setting myself up for huge criticism here.
No, I think you're onto something
by talking about people not dancing at my shows.
Onto something.
But yeah, it is interesting, and theatre's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, and Charlie, you're someone who must be up for a boogie. If I know you like I think I do. You're definitely dancing at concerts.
That's it, yeah. On a Saturday morning. I do like dance. I do like dance. Might take a couple of sherbets, but I will get down and on the dance floor. But I think it's an etiquette thing, because there was that incident at the Adele concert recently where there was one super fan who was up and shouting all the time and sort of really excited. Security came and stopped him and sort of told him to sit down. But Adele stopped the whole show to say, he's enjoying himself, he's having a great time, he's a really big fan of mine, let him have fun.
Yeah, good on Adele.
And I think there's a balance between, if you're sitting behind that, then you might not be able to see the concert, or you might not be able to enjoy it yourself. I mean, at theatre, I love going to the theatre. But I don't necessarily enjoy the person behind humming along to,
no.
Boulevard.
That's a put off immediately.
A big sort of, West End showstopper, and you've got, Mrs. Kipps behind, who's out of tune. It's not the most enjoyable experience, but I do, in theatres, I do quite like just to enjoy the theatre on the stage. But I think if you're at a concert,
I think possibly because in theatre, obviously, everything's a lot lower. The volume in concerts is so loud, you can't hear people singing and screaming. But you're right, in theatre, it's a really tricky one, that one, because you want to sing along, but then you sort of think,
Absolutely. I mean, this next story is kind of linked. Very interested to get all your views on this. So this is page 7 of The Sun today. This is lust-crazed women at Magic Mike. Now, Magic Mike, if you aren't familiar, is... How do you describe this, Peter?
His name's Mike and he's magic.
And he's a stripper, right?
He looks great.
He's a stripper. Yeah, lots of ripped men, you can imagine, on the stage. Apparently, lust-crazed women are groping theatre staff at the Magic Mike live show.
Wow.
Police have appealed for witnesses after groups of tipsy friends have poured at the strippers and the waiters. I mean, what do you make of this, Alex?
I don't know where to start with that. That's, I mean, it's fully loaded, right? But, I mean, as long as they're not getting on the stage and, going a bit too far on stage, I think that, it's a bit much. But, look, I think people get a bit drunk, things happen. If the staff don't like it, obviously it shouldn't happen, right? It wouldn't be acceptable if men were doing it to women, so let's just make that very clear.
Yeah.
And I think it should be the same for this. You've got to show a little bit of respect, because I'm sure those staff must get fed up after a while.
Do you think it's harmless fun, or do you think this is a bit of problematic?
I have a different view. I think it's absolute harmless fun. If you think, I mean, it's happened... This is one thing I can say has happened many times where people inappropriately will just... Well, it's called inappropriate.
Have you had that a lot?
In the past, times have changed, by the way. Times have changed.
Yeah.
So I used to get girls coming up saying, I love you. Now they come up and say, oh, my nan...
My nan loves you.
So I don't get much from the nans. But what I will say is that whenever that's happened, I've never gone, oh, that's inappropriate. I've always thought, they're just having fun. They're not doing it maliciously. Now, I'm not saying it's right, because there's some people who will absolutely not like that. But I've smiled a few times when it's happened to me.
Oh, you can't enjoy it.
Everyone has a bit of tension, don't they?
Just a little bit of fun.
I think it depends how far it goes, right?
Yeah.
I have heard some bar stuff. I've got some friends who are bar stuff. Some horror stories, and they're like, if it happens weekend after weekend, it's going to grind you down.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bit of harmless fun every now and then.
I think it's a good point that you've made there, that you just couldn't have it the other way around. I mean, if that was happening to me, if I was up on stage and I was being clawed at, if that was a man doing that to me, you'd be absolutely terrified, wouldn't you? You couldn't imagine it the other way around.
Well, I feel their pain, because I can barely walk down Oxford Street and without somebody at some stage. I know, please don't touch me. I can barely move through the corridors of GBNews without being...
Now, that is true.
I mean, is it possible to improve on perfection? Let's just be honest here.
You are definitely getting a Christmas call this year.
Well, a card, thank you. I want a card.
Look, this is the story that got us talking, didn't it, Pete? It's been really quite an emotional viewing, hasn't it, in the past 24 hours or so?
Yeah, Shane MacGowan, obviously, seeing the funeral and such a beautiful send-off, it makes you wonder, that we spend a lot of time at funerals, a lot of times really difficult, really hard to deal with. People are so scared to deal with things, and then you see a celebration of life and you think, actually, what a nice way.
Yeah. And we've got a clip.
What a nice way.
We've got a clip of this to share with you if you haven't already
send
seen it.
someone off, yeah.
This is Shane MacGowan's funeral.
Absolutely
Just beautiful, isn't it? As you just said, that is the way you want to go, a real celebration of life. It's actually... It makes you teary, doesn't it? Just watch it. It's tears of joy as well as obviously great sadness. And Jenny, I wanted to get your view on this, because I've got Irish family, and I do think with Shane MacGowan, obviously Irish English, the Pogues, you feel that Irish culture coming through where they are just so open about death and so accepting, really, of all of our fates.
Well, also, too, the Irish, it's a generalisation, blah, 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 but they celebrate everything.
Yeah.
With complete... When you go to an Irish wedding, if you've not changed your clothes 4 times and had at least 5 meals, then it's a rubbish wedding. You know, and when my father-in-law died, it was a total celebration.
Yeah.
That's just how they are. If you're going to do it, if you're going to show up, show up.
I mean, I was trying to look up why we're have this such fear of death and everything around it. And what was interesting was they were saying that after the Second World War, a lot of people kind of wanted to put death behind them. They didn't want to deal with it. And so at funerals, a lot of them are very sort of morbid, and it's very... sombre and emotional and difficult. But then when you see funerals like this and you think, actually, you know what? Celebrating the life, you just see it a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also very cultural, you know, because because you go to a funeral here, everybody's in black. You go to a funeral in other countries, everyone's in white. Some countries, everybody's in red. You know, it's all cultural.
What did you make of the funeral yesterday?
I thought it was beautiful, and just to say, I lost my grandfather. We laid him to rest last week, actually, and this is actually really, really beautiful to watch that clip there, because his funeral was really a lot like that. A real celebration of his life, and even the actual, you know, religious part of it, which was very, very short, was all about him and his history, you know, from World War II all the way through to his later years. And so I think maybe British people are changing their tone on that. And religious ceremonies can be quite, you know, dampening, I think, after a while. They don't really get to who they are, and Shane MacGowan's funeral is all about him.
I think that's a really, really good way of putting it. And just briefly with you, Charlie, because we are running out of time, just talking with some of the producers in the newsroom there, and Tara was just saying she thinks this is going to change funerals, actually, that people will see that and feel inspired to celebrate life. Do you think it could have that power?
Definitely. I think, look, you know, we're not very good at it. You're absolutely right, Peter. It's a British sort of inertia that we have, that we don't talk about things like bereavement, we don't talk about death enough. And so to see the musicians there, funny enough, giving it their all as a final send-off to Shane, because they believed in him, they loved him. And I think every funeral should be just a celebration of life, and you can all get behind the person who's had huge achievements, whoever they are, and celebrate their life and give them a good farewell.
Yeah, well said. Gives me goosebumps. Wonderful to see you all. Alex, Charlie and Jenny, thank you so much for your thoughts on all of those top stories today. Now, thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters are marching in central London, as they have been doing through the last few weeks, and they're obviously demonstrating against the resumption of Israel's bombing of Gaza. But there has been mounting pressure on the Met Police to take stricter action against incidents of anti-Semitism during the demonstrations. Well, joining us live now is GB News reporter Jack Carson. Very good morning to you, Jack. What is the latest there on the ground?
Yeah, good morning to you both. Well, we're here, you know, in the city of London, where, of course, these protesters are now starting to gather. We are expecting thousands of these pro-Palestine protesters on the streets of London today, of course. It's part of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign's march to end the ceasefire, and they say end the war in Gaza, of course. That Israel-Hamas war has been going on for weeks, and, of course, Israel have started that ground offensive, as well as now, after those humanitarian pauses, and that ceasefire after, of course, that hostage deal was struck between the two sides, that, of course, the bombing of Gaza is now continued, and the IDF continuing their campaign to try and, of course, find as many and root out those members of Hamas within Gaza. So these Palestine protesters as well, also, of course, emboldened probably in their cause after that vote on the UN Security Council yesterday, where, of course, 13 out of the 15 members of the council did vote to support a ceasefire. The UK abstaining on that vote, but the US as a permanent member using its veto to, of course, keep up their support with Israel. For those people here protesting today, they'll take that as a sign that their campaign very much needs to continue. Now, it's just under 2 miles, the circuit here. We're going to end up in Parliament Square, and, of course, the Metropolitan Police, as you mentioned, Ellie, have come under some criticism over their handling of some of the protesters that have ended up, you know, taking you know, stands against warm memorials and others. Of course, we know we've seen protections around the cenotaph particularly. That again is in place again today. Now, the Metropolitan Police say that they've put Section 12 of the Public Order Act conditions with that as well. And of course, the protest today has to end. Speeches have to end by 4 p.m. And of course, to help that dispersal of the protesters, this event here today has to finish by 5 p.m.
OK, Jack Carson, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on the ground there in central London.
Now, coming up, we've got the legendary Stephanie Beacham, a fantastic actress, who is doing a film that's very different for her. It's something very personal to her. It's a great, great story, and it's actually premiering tomorrow. So
yeah, we're going to be hearing all about that. Plus, we're going to be answering all your questions on the week's news and your comments as well. So do keep sending them in. gbnews@gbnews.com. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Can you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's lovely to have you watching us. So let's have a look at what you have been saying at home.
Yeah, we've been inundated with emails, so thank you so much. Heidi says, loving Ellie and Peter together. Another great pairing on GB News. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Heidi.
Lisa says, hi, Ellie and Peter. I was Peter's escort in 1992. Oh, sorry. I was Peter's escort when he visited Garden Festival.
A garden festival, different kind.
Wales in 1992. Peter was a complete...
different kind of escort.
was a complete gentleman. I accompanied many artists around. Thank you so much for that. That's really nice.
Listen, again, he's too humble to read it. Peter was always a complete gentleman. He was truly professional and a pleasure to work with. And I will read it if you don't want to. He won't read anything nice about himself, so I will instead. Graham says, back in the 90s, I was working security. Is it just all your former staff?
I've got a rent-a-crowd going. Yeah. I've been paying everyone very...
This is great.
No,
Graham
nice.
says, back in the 90s, I was working security on Pete's tour, Mysterious Girl. It was wild. I remember Pete's vehicle completely covered in messages written in lipstick with messages for Pete. He was a delight to work for. Humble, kind and fun. Happy days. Warm regards from Graham. Now, how amazing are you as a person that these people worked with you in the 90s and they still have such fond memories of you and how lovely you are?
My dad was always so strict and he always used to say to me, if you treat people nice, it doesn't mean you're not going to fail, but it just means that you're less likely to be kicked when you're down and people will always reach out a hand. And you know what? I really appreciate people saying that. Thank you.
That is so, so lovely.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Anyway, we love that. So let us know all your thoughts, please, because we do love the fact that you guys are writing in. All the topics that we're discussing today, we want to hear from you. It's not our views, it's your views. So please, even though we do give our views, but we kind of try and keep it very balanced. So, yeah, just go to gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah, and also don't miss our special guest, which we're very excited for, Stephanie Beacham, the incredible actress who is making a return to the big screen this weekend. That is coming up shortly. But first, let's get your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ellie, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Lib Dems are calling for an investigation to see whether the Prime Minister breached the ministerial code by failing to declare a £100 million payment to Rwanda. It was sent to Kigali in April on top of the £140 million already paid. That brings the total to £240 million. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has warned Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill doesn't go far enough. The Times reports the Rwanda legislation has been given only a 50% best chance of successfully getting flights off the ground next year. 3 elderly people died after a large fire broke out at a hospital in Tivoli near Rome. The blaze started on an underground floor of the San Giovanni Evangelista Hospital, the flames reaching the emergency room and the intensive care unit. Thick smoke forced 200 patients to also be evacuated to another ward, among them several children and a pregnant woman. Court documents have revealed the late Queen wanted the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to continue being given adequate security after stepping back from royal duties. An extract from a letter written by the late Queen's private secretary states it's imperative the family continues to be provided with effective security. In a statement, Prince Harry said he felt forced to leave the UK after the security he had been downgraded. He's suing Associated Newspapers Limited over an article about his legal challenge against the Home Office following a decision to change his security arrangements. And brace yourself as Storm Ellen brings gale-force winds and heavy rain to the UK this weekend. The Met Office says the Midlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland will see gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. Wind speeds will increase in the west throughout this morning, then across other areas through the afternoon, before easing slowly from the west into this evening. Homes and businesses may experience flooding as well, as up to 80 millimetres of rain is to fall in some parts of the country. For more on all of those stories, you can visit our website, gbnews.com. Now back to Peter and Ellie.
Thanks, Tatiana. It's time now for our weekly dose of showbiz news, and we're delighted to have showbiz journalist Stephanie Tecci with us. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello, guys. Good morning.
You look so festive.
I feel like a Christmas angel, the GB Christmas angel.
Yes, you do look like
Bringing
an angel.
some festive joy.
Or a snow lady.
I will try. I like
Snow
that.
lady.
Snow
Love
lady.
the snowman.
I love that. I love
like
that.
a bit of
Equality.
snow.
Yeah, equality. It's all
I
about
love
equality.
that. OK,
Yeah.
Benjamin Zephaniah. I mean, so sad. He's died at age 65 now. This is personal to you. You've been tweeting a lot about this morning.
Yeah, when I think of authors who have really influenced me and inspired me, Benjamin Zephaniah was at the top of it, talking about the black experiences. We don't get many of those in this country, and he really was a titan of British literature, and he done it in a way that was so intelligent and thought-provoking. You know, he really had the odds stacked against him. He left school at 14 with dyslexia, then to becoming a man whose work is featured in the national curriculum. We don't get many of those in this country, and he should be celebrated. He's someone who brought dub poetry into British TV, so we're talking about poetry mixed with reggae music. Again, it's refreshing, it's unique, and when I saw that he died after such a short battle with a brain tumour, it was really upsetting. But the thing about people, when artists like that go, they leave this incredible amount of body of work, which I think will just live on and be a part of his legacy.
He's such a success story, isn't he? I mean, we were speaking about that, weren't we, before the show, Pete? The fact that he had dyslexia. He could barely read or write himself, and then went on to become this incredible writer and poet. And he's also an actor, and many people would recognise him from Peaky Blinders.
He starred in like 14 episodes of the show, and people do remember him for that. If you don't know him for his poetry, then you knew him for Peaky Blinders. And his castmates have come up with so many tributes saying he was intelligent and he was a key member of the family. So, and one thing I liked about Benjamin as well, he highlighted not just issues about race, but he recently spoke about male infertility, which not many men like talking about, but he actually had that. So he shone a light on that, and that's what I'm going to miss about him, that voice.
And
what an incredible
man. And it's great the fact that, you know, there's a whole new generation that may or may not know of him, that know of him now. And they want to discover his work, which is amazing. Should
Poetry and art always lives on.
Steph, Taylor Swift. Now,
money,
she's like
money.
becoming a phenomenon, right?
She is.
She always has been, Pete.
This week.
You're sat amongst Swifties.
I know. I mean, but there is a lot of people in other countries that are like just starting to really see the effect she's having and how successful she's becoming. The first billionaire from music alone. I mean, this is something incredible.
It's usually when we think about singers and artists, they have to diverse their portfolio because it's not just enough making money from music. But Taylor Swift, she's made £500 million just from her catalogue alone, music catalogue. Royalties, another $500 million. This year, when she released her Midnight's album, in the first week alone, 1.5 million units sold. This is not heard of. Like, Pete, you know, with the music industry at the moment, it's dying a horrible death where people cannot sustain an income as an artist. So to have Taylor Swift have that success is quite inspirational, but it shows her star power as a singer. Taylor's music is just, she's just an ultimate showwoman in that sense.
She is a showwoman, Steph. I mean, you know how we feel about her. But she does seem unstoppable. I saw the most amazing clip of her this week. I don't know if you caught it as well. It was Taylor speaking in 2013, and I think it's a BBC interview. And she's asked, you know, what are you hoping you can achieve in 10 years' time? And she's like, oh, I hope I'm doing something creative. Like you, very humble.
No, she
had no idea, and she's a billionaire.
And that's the thing. Every once in a while, we do get that artist of a generation. You're talking about your Dells, your Beyoncés and your Taylors, where they manage to cut through so many different generations and they still bring quality music. And once you produce that quality music, the fans will come. And she's got her Swifties, and I think they will continue following Taylor for the rest of her career. And she's a woman in her 30s, so she's just only beginning.
And let's not forget there's some amazing artists out there, like Rihanna, who's also a billionaire, but it's from other ventures.
She had to do that with lingerie.
Absolutely, and I mean, which is incredible. You know, she's a huge success story, but to do it just through music is...
You're breaking records.
You were saying that's so rare.
But I hope it can be inspirational to other musicians out there because, you know, musicians have gone through COVID, they've gone through so many things, so I hope this could be inspiring to them.
No, that's good.
Steph, we've just got enough time to ask you about what we think is the most important story of the week, really, is the loss of Shane MacGowan, of course, so dreadfully sad, but also the most incredible Irish funeral yesterday. Let's just watch a clip of that.
It was amazing. incredibly emotional, but what a send-off.
What a send-off.
And we've had some emails in.
Yeah.
Emily saying, my mum was Irish. When she knew she was dying, she organised her whole funeral from the undertakers to to the who was in which car, to paying for a hotel function room, hiring a DJ and leaving money behind the bar. We partied from 1 p.m. after the funeral to the early hours. So it's things like that that just show that, you know, celebrating life is such a good, positive way to deal with bereavement.
I couldn't agree with you more, Peter. I think, you know, funerals are so, you know, they're very sad because you're saying goodbye to somebody, but at the same time, there should be a celebration. There should be the celebration of life and remembering them. I actually interviewed Shane last year and he was so full of life and he did bring the stars out. So I'm not surprised to be seeing people like Johnny Depp, Bob Geldof, Nick Cave there because it's a testament to who he was.
Yeah, what an absolutely incredible celebration of life. Stephanie Tecci, thank you so much
you guys
for
for
taking us
having
through
me.
all of the showbiz stories today. And just this email from Anne on Shane MacGowan's funeral. He says, hi, Peter and Ellie, I believe funerals should be a celebration of life like Shane MacGowan's funeral. And I've told my family this, I don't want dark clothes worn. I will choose bright, happy hymns. And maybe it will change funerals now. Maybe people feel inspired to have a funeral just like that.
Thank you for being here and looking so festive and wonderful.
I'm just in the festive spirit.
Coming up, we've got another Stephanie, the legendary actress Stephanie Beacham. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, me too. She's got a special movie coming out and we can't wait to hear all about it. So you will hear all about it after this short break.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Showbiz, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 11:46. Thank you so much for your company. Now, our next guest is an absolute legend of the screen. Her name is Stephanie Beacham, best known for her roles in Dynasty, and The Colbys. But now Stephanie has taken on a new role.
In a movie that is totally different to what she's used to, Stephanie takes on the character of Peg, who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, in her new film, Grey Matter.
Yeah, this new female-led drama is a heartwarming drama with an all-star cast about the impact of this horrible disease and the mental health impact on the whole family. So let's take a sneak peek.
You want to live to work today?
No, I got fired yesterday.
What? What did you do?
This till's closed. Why do you always think I did something? The customer's not always right, that's all I'm saying.
I don't think you're going to be sitting around the house all day.
I wasn't going to.
Come on, Chloe! Push, push, push! You can come with me to Nan's.
Mom! Mom! Maybe she's napping. Well, in the middle of the afternoon. It's what old people do, isn't it? What's your excuse? Mom!
What are you doing here? It's Tuesday. We go shopping. You're forgetting things.
I am not forgetting things. Is Nan okay?
What do you know about Alzheimer's, Mrs. Els?
Yeah.
Well, Stephanie Beacham, welcome to
Very
Saturday
sad,
Morning
yeah.
Live. Very, very good to have you with us on the programme.
Lovely to be here.
What was filming Grey Matter like for you? It looks like a really gritty drama, very important one.
It was a massive laughs and we had a great time. And I adore the director, Arabella Burford-Dons, because she's new at it and she has a vision that is... She is so on the point all the time, and it's a complete joy to work with people who are wanting badly to make a good film.
And it's a film personal to you. Can you just explain why you got into this?
Well, for a start, Peg, my character, doesn't know she's getting Alzheimer's. And she keeps denying that she has anything wrong, but she lets her snakes out. She keeps snakes. She lets her snakes out. She forgets things. She leaves things cooking. And her family get worried. And then she's diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the descent is quite fast. As it was with my father. It is an awful disease. It's usually diagnosed too late, and that's something that W4 Films and me, I'm partnering up with a small and very powerful little Alzheimer's charity called Brace. Because it is absolutely necessary that we diagnose dementia early.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know that dementia was the umbrella title, and Alzheimer's is just one of the diseases. Now, obviously, each disease has to be treated differently, exactly like cancer.
Yeah.
But although it's the major killer in England of people, can you believe that? That's what dementia is, the major killer. There's only a fifth of the amount of money put into the research for it that there is with cancer, because we've been living with the awfulness of cancer, it seems, for longer. But dementia is what is going to really make unhappy
It's very
families.
cruel, very, very cruel.
It's a very cruel disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandfather had dementia, and watching his decline was one of the most painful things, I think, for us as a family. How important...
My father was he, I think, knew that he was mentally descending. But being a very bright and humorous man, he would, for example, if we were all in a cafe with all the family, he would say, I am now taking orders, and he would write things down. And we thought he was just playing waiter and being his normal... He couldn't have remembered from the table to the counter what everybody had asked for.
It's incredibly sad. My mother is at the moment suffering from vascular dementia and Parkinson's.
I am so
And I'm
sorry.
seeing the decline, and it really is hard to almost... I was so excited about you coming on because I think this film's going to do wonders for awareness, and to say, actually, you're absolutely right. We need to get the diagnosis earlier, and that
Diagnosis early.
Yeah.
And then find out what sort of dementia it is.
Yeah.
And then we need to do... But the last year or so, there's a lot of medicines being developed. And Brace has got some very exciting things. There's an EEG cap, ECEG, I don't know. But it's you're tested.
Yeah.
To see... Short-term memory goes first. And to see how bad it is, and therefore what your path of hopefully help can be. Finally, of course, a cure. That's what we'll be aiming at.
That's what we all hope and pray for. What is really important, I imagine, Stephanie, for you is, of course, capturing that person going through such a horrible disease and how debilitating that must be for that person. But also, I think the three of us talking today, all impacted by this disease, not having it ourselves.
One in two people will be impacted or are impacted, either because they get it or a family member gets it. Everybody suffers when that sort of illness that is not going to get better. That is the terrible, terrible thing, seeing the descent, isn't it?
And like you mentioned, you know, it's cruel when you see them starting to lose memory. The short term goes first, but also the fact that you might think, oh, they look happy. I see Mum sometimes and she's laughing, and I think, but what's really going on in her mind is confusion. And this is the thing. The loss is great for them, not being able to do what they...
I think there's a stage which is really worrying for the patient. In the end, it is a ghastliness for the whole family. But I think, hopefully, or rather, this is what I think I experienced with my father, he was out of confusion. He was in a netherworld.
Yeah.
But we have to look after our people who are in a netherworld. It could take several years before you lose them. That is a desperate drain on the emotion and finance of everybody. We've got to get this disease really tackled, like we're doing with cancer.
Now, the film is...
Oh, I'm crying.
No, I understand. I mean, it's really nice of you to come on and talk about this.
But the film is fun. Please
premiering it tomorrow, is that right?
Yes, at the London Film Festival, and I'm tickled pink that should be the case.
And when's it available for everyone to watch?
It's coming. It will be on... something, and I don't know, haven't been told what.
Okay.
But it's going to have a cinema release in the new year. Yes.
Thank you so
much.
Very
Thank you so much,
kind.
Stephanie,
Very,
for
very
sharing
kind.
that with
Thank
us.
you.
I'm sorry.
Really passionate project.
so
It's
sweet.
so important. Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you for your company. We'll be back next week.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. I'm Ellie Glazier. It was a very wet and windy start to Saturday for most of us, but there is some sunshine on the way across the southern half of the UK. Storm Ellen, though, has been named by the Irish Met Service, bringing the strongest winds and the heaviest rain across the Republic of Ireland. But this spreading its way across northern England and into parts of Scotland later this afternoon. Those strongest winds expected along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts up to 70 miles an hour this afternoon. And that heavy rainfall as well, really building up across Northern Ireland, Northern England and into parts of eastern Scotland through this afternoon. The southern half of the UK generally staying sunnier with temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees. As we go through Saturday evening, rain gradually brings its way south and eastwards across the Pennines and into parts of eastern England through into the early hours of Sunday morning. This could bring some localised flooding to some parts through Sunday morning. Some strong winds too likely, but further south it will be turning brighter with some clear skies to start on Sunday morning. Temperatures here holding up above zero, around 6 or 7 degrees, but a little bit cooler just across parts of Scotland. A brighter start for many of us on Sunday though, but turning cloudy from the southwest as this band of rain pushes up and spreads its way north and eastwards through the day on Sunday. Some heavy rainfall totals again falling on some already very wet ground, but some brighter spells across the very far southwest and perhaps a little bit milder here. Temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees, but around average across the north.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me.